Hey friends, so I just want to do a little check-in for our week 2 of our May Blissipline Fresh New Moment. So quick recap, we're doing Fresh New Moment. It's an intervention all by itself. You just stop and you go fresh new moment, fresh new moment. And because we're doing it together, I have been practicing it more than usual, and I will say it's been very nice, really a good reminder how just to come back from mind wandering. And then this week we have focused, the intro video focused on being present for difficult feelings. And so Galen posted a question, is it possible to use this for physical feelings too? And I said, yes, I'm going to make a video about that because it's such a good question. So there's a similar principle that applies to, excuse me, physical and emotional feelings, and that is that thoughts can amplify them or diminish them. And so in Buddhism, for example, they'll refer to this as the second arrow. And so the first arrow is when the arrow hits you, right? And it's like, it's really painful, and it's an injury. But the second arrow are the thoughts about it. Oh my God, this is so awful. I'll never be able to play piano again, Okay, being a little silly, but the second arrow is the thought. And in Buddhism, the understanding is the second arrow hits right at the same spot, but because that part is already so injured, the pain is much, much greater. And so I guess I'm sort of mixing metaphors here because that's about a metaphor for a physical injury. But with the mind and physical suffering, we can greatly increase our suffering by thinking about it in certain ways, for sure. Now, can we make it go away completely by thinking about it? The short answer is no, but the longer answer is the placebo effect is a real thing. And we don't really know what it is yet. We have lots of interesting information that is coming out about the placebo effect in neurobiology and stuff like that. And I've just happened to have right here this book by this guy, David Hamilton, where he wrote a book called Why Woo Woo Works. And he got interested because he was a researcher for drug companies looking at, how to develop drugs. Actually, their main job is, what can this drug do? What can we market it for? So in any case, that was his job. And he got really curious about the placebo effect, and he was very dissatisfied with the answers that people, it's just something we have to account for. He's like, but what is it? What is it? And he started looking into things, and he started to explore why alternate techniques can help. And he looked at all the data. There's lots of double-blind studies referenced in this book. This is a total geek book. If you're not a geek, you might not enjoy it, but I loved it. And there is an audible recording of it with him reading it in his awesomely charming Scottish accent. So Why Woo Woo Works. So the placebo effect is a real thing, and so therefore we don't really know what's possible for us individually. We really don't, and it is worth exploring. So I will note that some people are experiencing a lot of chronic pain, and I don't want to even for a second diminish what you're experiencing. I will start with something a little simpler, okay? Many, many times I've done this individually in therapy sessions. I've done it in groups. I've done it for myself. I've done it for friends many, many times. I've been talking with someone who has had a headache, and we do this really simple technique where I invite them to simply notice where the headache is, kind of trace it. It's like here, and and sort of notice the intensity of it. Notice how deep it seems to go. Notice if it seems to extend out beyond the head. Just notice where is your sense of where it is in space. And then after we've given a little bit of attention to it, we move our awareness outside of the headache. And bear in mind, while I'm guiding them through this, I use that slightly hypnotic voice. It goes like this. Okay, so just take a moment and sort of trace the outlines of it, so I'm doing this thing. It's a little bit of an induction, so then we'll feel the space outside of the headache. So wherever it ends, if it sort of fade, so I'll ask them if it's a hard out, like a steady line, or a fade out. Wherever it ends, wherever it's gone, I'll invite them to rest awareness in that and just create space outside of the headache. I don't even know what that means. They don't know what it means. Create space outside of the headache, what? But you kind of know. So they sort of do. It's like something in them relaxes, and very quickly, in many instances, the headache just fades and literally disappears. So this is related to what we were talking about with the allowing of the emotions in week 2, this allowing of the arc of emotion. You give them space and then they do naturally subside. Remember the balloon settles unless you keep popping it up. So there is an aspect of pain that is us maintaining it through our resistance to it. It's sort of like you're gripping it, like, right? And so that maintains it. So through the releasing of the gripping, sometimes the pain can just diminish. And so I've done this effectively many, many times. Now, there's lots of next level techniques on this. For example, EFT, emotional freedom techniques, was developed by this guy, Gary Craig. He's got a great website, by the way, with a ton of information on it, and has been used for all kinds of physical suffering to enormous benefit. So now, that's a kind of a simple understanding of allowing space for the thing. Again, not reactivating it with thoughts, just the same way we talked about emotions. And there is a natural subsiding of it. Now, obviously, when it's something a little more obviously physically related, like maybe you have an injured joint that you've had surgery and it's healing, and so in that case, obviously there is an arc of healing that you're in the midst of. The pain doesn't just disappear, but the extra suffering part of the pain does just disappear. It literally, because it is caused by that resistance. So the other thing is, the mind can tell stories about the pain, like, oh God, this is going to go forever. Why did this happen to me? This shouldn't have happened to me. I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. Oh, I'm getting old. I heal so much slower when I'm old. Whatever the thoughts are. And all of these thoughts generate an internal bracing and tension that exacerbates the pain. So dealing with difficult physical feelings and dealing with difficult emotional feelings has a similarity that if we will notice the narrative, remember the thoughts and feelings are separate, notice the narrative, we can simply relinquish it. Remember we talked about counting from 1 to 10, right? We can simply relinquish it, or we can tell a different narrative. That's actually harder. I'm just going to say, like, just put on, because as soon as you start to tell a different narrative, like an alternate narrative, the mind will argue with you, and now you've set an internal conflict. So almost better to just tell none. And so to do that, we count perhaps, or we distract ourselves. But the tapping is a really, really, really good way to move in the direction. It's a distraction, right? So as we tell it, as we change the narrative or stop the narrative, the resistance in the body subsides and the body can start to move back into a flow state. And the body understands what you need the pain for. Remember we were talking about the hands on the hot side? Oh, so right after that I burned myself baking shepherd's pie. So the pain makes you pull your hand back, right? So we talked about that. Well, that's its job. It doesn't actually need to keep sending signals to you once it's done its job. And the body is pretty sophisticated and nuanced on this. It kind of knows. So when we start to get our thinking mind, the narrative mind that has a story about how this shouldn't have happened, or we're dumb, or people are dumb, or whatever the story is, as soon as we stop that telling of the story, the natural functioning of the system can move back, and the body knows how much pain messages to send. Now, is this not a blanket statement? I want to be really, really clear. This is not, there are things that this does not address, but there are lots of things it does address. And I do invite you to explore this, no matter what you're experiencing. If there is some physical suffering involved, there is some merit in exploring whether or not you are adding to the suffering by telling a story in your mind, by bracing against it. So let me see, I had some other notes. Yes. So the notes I made was in the same way that we give space for the emotions, we give space for the feeling of pain. We literally create space around it in our mind. So in the headache case, we're like, okay, just create space in the part that doesn't hurt. Just give it room. It's almost like it expands and then it's under less pressure. These are just metaphors because none of that's really happening, right? So we give space for the feeling, and similar with the emotions, when we give it space, it subsides all by itself. The other thing is implicit in what I just said, what I want to make it explicit. We don't make the situation wrong. Adding wrongness to a situation is one of the things that causes the most suffering. That doesn't mean we make it right. We just don't make it wrong. Because after all, it is, right? So here I've got this lovely burn on my hand, right? Is that wrong? Yeah, it just is, right? I burned it. I was getting something out of the oven and I touched the rack or something and I burned it. And I went, ow, and I pulled it out and it's fine. You know, it's recovering, it's healing. This is what healing looks like. So as soon as we make something wrong, when we're saying it shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't be like this, I was stupid, why was I so stupid, why was the oven so hot, I don't know, all the ways we can make it wrong, that adds a great deal of tension, bracing, and resistance, and that amplifies the pain and suffering. And as far as healing goes, I do want to be clear that there's lots of evidence. I'll give a little good example here. There's lots of evidence that changing our feeling about the situation, finding a way to feel better, facilitates and accelerates the healing process. So there's two different aspects of this. One is in the moment, diminishing the experience of pain, diminishing the amount of suffering. And then the second one is the actual healing. And this is a very interesting study that was done. I might get it a little bit wrong. I'm pretty sure it's in here, but I read about it years ago because this study was done like in the 80s. We have known about this so long. We are so slow to implement changes. So anyway, there was a hospital wing that had, the sort of typical corridor down the middle and rooms on both sides with windows facing outwards, right? It's very typical hospital design. And this particular wing was for recovery from gallbladder surgery, if I recall correctly. And what they did was they took the data, they took all the books from after the fact. So there's no way they could have changed this data by affecting it, by having certain attitudes, asking leading questions. They looked at like several years worth of past data. And what they found was this. On one side of the hallway, there were windows that faced a parking lot where cars were coming and going. It's just asphalt, it's just ugly. And the other part faced trees and greenery and was quiet. And what they found is that along these two corridors with the gallbladder surgery recoveries, the people on the tree side of the hallway recovered faster in three distinct ways. One is that they asked for less pain medication, right? So this is in the data, in the, like, these people just asked for less pain medication than these people. They left on average like a day earlier or something like this. And there was a third parameter. I can't recall offhand what it was, but it was stuff like that they looked after the fact and said, wow, this helps people heal faster. Now, you would think that such a simple, passive way of implementing healing would then have been like, well, let's make every hospital reflect this. But of course, that is not the case if you've ever been in a hospital recently at all. But we can know this for ourselves. We can know that if I will put myself in a situation in which my stress level is lowered, in which maybe my oxygenation from being around plants is increased, whatever it is that happens in these situations where we find ourselves feeling better because of the situation, we heal faster and our experience of pain is less. So something to think about on the front. And so again, I just want to remind us, fresh new moment is the foundational practice. Don't forget this. I mean, it's the practice this month. Do whatever you want. However, the reason I say don't forget this is because if you will practice fresh new moment, just like that's the practice, right? And you're like, oh, right, I should practice fresh. Okay. Fresh new moment. Fresh new moment. And then if you want to apply one of these other things to emotional or physical discomfort, great. And if you don't, you can do something else. Look around. Just, you're stepping into your authority in that moment. You're stepping into your autonomy, your sovereignty. You're like, I am a sovereign being and I get to make a new choice here. I'm paying attention. Okay? Sovereignty and awareness. All right? Just maybe you guys know, but the 3 pillars of Blissipline: sovereignty, awareness, and empowerment, which is skill. So you're stepping into the possibility of activating your own Blissipline, your discipline and skill of being happier. All right, any questions? Post them below.